Hey guys. Okay, so here's what we're gonna do. So you need your notes out from yesterday. We're gonna kind of do a quick review of it. But it's gonna be quick because you guys got it the first time around, and so it's just mentioning it and kind of referring to it. And then we're gonna go into our new stuff, which is having a bias survey and an unbiased survey. So the first thing is we took notes on making predictions. We talked about what statistics, survey, sample, and population are. I want to remind you that the survey is like the questions you give. The sample are the people you ask the questions to. And the population is who those people that you ask questions to are representing. So for instance, if I asked our Jaguar team, our 6th grade Jaguar team, a question, and I wanted it to be a representation of the entire 6th grade, the people that I asked the questions to, so that would be the Jaguar team, would be the sample. The entire 6th grade at Woodland Middle School would be the population. And so there's kind of the difference between the two. So then we moved on and we started talking about, okay, so how do you find the probability? Well, you take what you know. So this first one asked us, what's the probability of science? And we knew that it said 15 science and out of a total of 40 people. So 15 out of 40, which we simplified to 3/8. And then it was like, take that information and predict what it's going to be. Well, we wrote our fraction of 15/40. You could have written 3/8 as well. And we put it equivalent to something over 400. And some of us realized you can just multiply it by 10. And so that's exactly what you did to get 150. Some of you guys realized, hey, we can do our cross multiplication where we multiply our cross products because they should be equal. So we did 400 times 15 to get 6,000. And then 4 times something, so I made it an x, is 40x. I think I just said 4. I meant 40 times something. So 40 times x is 40x. And then obviously to solve that, it's a one-step equation. We divide by 40 from both sides, and you again get 150 students. Then we moved on. It asked us a question about sample size, and then all sample size was, how many people did they survey? Well, they surveyed 20. Then it was, find the probability of soccer. Well, there was 8 people that did soccer, so it was 8 out of 20. Volleyball was 5 out of 20, which became 1/4. For track and field, when we looked at that one, it was 4/20, which equaled 1/5. So we went ahead and it asked us, hey, how many people are going to want track and field if it's 550 students? Well, if that's the case, you made it equal to 1 over 5 equals something over 550, which we figured out was 110. Then this last one asked us a percentage question, which was kind of fun because we remembered that, hey, we did percent of a number already. That was an entire chapter that we did. And so it's saying, hey, if 82% of the students said they saved some money, out of 340 students, how many saved some money? Well, you need to figure out 82% of 340, which you can change it to a decimal and multiply. Or we could make it a fraction and make an equivalent fraction and use our proportion information. We got 278.8. You can't have 0.8 of a person, so we said about 279 students. Then we started talking, and this is kind of the new stuff, so I really want you to focus in. If I point out any information on here or take any notes, I need you guys to go ahead and make sure that you're getting your notes on your paper as well. If you need to pause and go back to the other stuff, pause, go back. That's what having a video is nice about. So unbiased samples, we have a simple random sample and a systematic random sample. You'll notice that they both use the word random because in order for something to be completely unbiased, you have to pick people at random. An example of the simple random sample is each student's name is written on a piece of paper, the names are placed in a bowl, and names are picked without looking. Totally random. Systematic random sample is where you're choosing every 10th person. Well, this one says every 20th person is chosen from an alphabetical list of all students attending school. If you look back at the problems we did over here, just before, the first problem talked about how they chose every 10th student entering the school. Well, when you're choosing every 10th student that enters the school, that is considered to be a systematic random sample. So that was an unbiased sample, which is what we want, because if something's biased, that means the information's not totally right and you can't really count it, so it's not valid. So, bias sample. There's always the convenience sample, which is an example of that would be to represent all the students attending a school. The principal surveys the students in one math class. Well, it's just easiest to just pick one class and do it. That's a convenience thing versus picking people at random or picking random classes, a couple from each class. Then we have voluntary response sample. That's a biased sample as well, because if people are volunteering to give you information, they're usually doing it for a purpose, either to express their opinions, whether they really like something or they really don't like something. Either way, that's a voluntary response sample, and that's also considered to be a biased sample. So we talked about number 1 yesterday. It said, to determine if the tomatoes in 5 boxes stacked on a pallet are not spoiled. So they want to take a sample of these tomatoes on these 5 boxes that are stacked. And the restaurant manager checks only 3 tomatoes from the top box. Well, that's not a very valid sample, as we discussed yesterday, because you only picked 3 and you only picked from the top box. What if the top box is all good, but the other 4 are all spoiled? So one of the things you want to make sure is this is not a valid sample. He should have picked from several boxes. Another thing we could have mentioned here in our notes is the fact that this was a convenience sample. This would be an example of the convenience sample. All right, turn the page. So this is kind of the new stuff. So if you need to go back, go ahead and rewind, go through things, listen to the explanation again. If you're still struggling, you can always watch the videos that are on your book website as well. But here we go. So a random survey of students in 8th grade shows that 7 prefer hamburgers, 5 chicken, and 3 prefer hot dogs. Is the sample valid? What do you think? Well, let's look at this. Random. A random survey of students. This is indeed a valid sample. So knowing that, what percentage prefer hot dogs? I want you to pause it, write what you get, and then hit unpause. So hopefully you hit pause and do this on your own. But yes, hot dogs, there's 3 out of 15, so 3/15, which is 20%. Then we have, if 120 students will attend the 8th grade picnic, how many hot dogs should be ordered for each student to get one? Well, if you think about this, this goes back to our proportions. So we go ahead and we set up our proportion. 3/15 equals what over 120? Well, if it changed from 15 to 120, what are you going to do? Hit pause, come up with your answer, and then unpause me. You should have come up with 24 hot dogs. You should have realized that 15 times 8 gets us 120, so we did 3 times 8 to get 24. You could have also done the cross products, which gets you 360 equals 15x, and then you would solve that. Next, we've got determine whether the conclusion is valid. Justify your answer. When you see justify your answer, you got to write a sentence. You got to tell me, what kind of sample is it? So here we go. Students who wish to represent the school at the school board meeting are asked to stop by the office after lunch. After lunch, 5 students wish to represent the school. Is this a valid sample? Hit pause, come up with your answer. The answer is no. It's actually a bias sample. It's a bias sample because you're asking people to volunteer to come to the office after lunch. So this would be a voluntary response sample, which is a bias sample, which means this is not, this is not a valid sample. Alrighty. Number 5, it says a member of the cafeteria staff asked every 5th student leaving the cafeteria to rank 5 vegetables for their most favorite to least favorite. She finds the corn is one of the favorite vegetables. Is this valid? Hit pause, come up with your answer. Tell me why. Every 5th student should tell you something. It should tell you that this is an unbiased, systematic, random sample. The fact that it's unbiased means the conclusion is a valid conclusion. Valid. Number 6, a real estate agent surveys people about their housing preferences at an open house for a luxury townhome. He finds that most people prefer townhomes. Is this biased or unbiased? Is this valid or not valid? Hit pause. All right. Well, he's at an open house for luxury townhomes, trying to see if people like townhomes. This is definitely a biased sample, since the people surveyed probably prefer townhomes. This is a convenience sample. All right, that's you're more than willing to go ahead and look in your book at the misleading graphs section, as that's what's coming up next. But right now, I want you to go ahead and hit end, rewind, go back to whatever you may need. And if you have any questions, raise your hand. Otherwise, you can go ahead, get started on your homework. And if you finish early, feel free to